It was calm. The radio was silent. The plastic of their vac suits clattered softly as the crew of the Lazy Racer wound their way along a narrow path rising sharply up a barren mountainside. Captain Fogel bought combat environment suits for the entire crew after Turridead. Getting chased out of the low port by a gang of angry, trigger-happy militiamen convinced the skipper that his crew might need uniforms a little thicker than a company t-shirt. When the ship was just jumping around, trading and searching local records, the old merchant would never have spent half as much on body armor. But Turridead made it reasonably clear that treasure hunting can be dangerous. And Winston Fogel took good care of his crew. Now, there it is. Nestled on the mountaintop above them, a small stone octagon-shaped tower exactly like the one they had tried to infiltrate on Turridead, right where the computer said it should be. For more than a year, the crew of the Lazy Racer have hopped from system to system, trading, running from pirates, avoiding customs patrols, doing odd jobs, and everywhere they went, they gathered rumors. Rumors scattered across more than a dozen worlds along the Spinward Main. Rumors of a lost supply fleet. Rumors of the healing and combat drugs they were carrying when the small fleet disappeared on the way to the front during the Fourth Frontier War. Rumors that had ultimately brought them to this place. If the lost cargo of the Gyro Cadiz is really on this desolate, poisonous planet, it would be worth millions. When the crew landed on this world, they had assumed the difficulty they had getting permission to search the surface of Philosophen was bureaucratic inflexibility. But someone followed them out here. The crew spotted them occasionally, following behind in a local all-terrain vehicle, not unlike the one the crew had taken to get here. Bryn, the navigator, was particularly worried. She knew something was going on. Something the bureaucrats running this planet didn't want them to find. As she climbed the narrow path up the barren mountainside with the rest of the crew, she kept thinking about how the squirrely little administrator that finally relented and signed their entry visa was hiding something. Dayon, the skinny little Darien Marine, was, as usual, the first to spot the commotion in the valley below. As the crew trudged up the side of the progressively steepening mountainside, Dayon saw some movement. At first, he thought it was that damned ATV again, but it was no ATV. As his binoculars auto-focused on the valley floor, Dayon's blood froze. It was a grav tank, then another, then a third. The ATV that had been following them appeared last, bringing up the rear of the column. The vehicles were Zodani APCs. Any grunt would recognize one of those things instantly. As Dayon watched, the column of armored vehicles stopped at the base of the mountain they were climbing. The rear doors of the APCs came down, each deploying a squad of Zodani Marines. The presence of Zodani this deep in Imperial space is an overt act of war. Dayon's head spun as he muttered under his breath, "What the hell is going on here?" Zodani Marines wear state-of-the-art powered armor with the locust-like helmets that have become iconic symbols of fear and hate inside the Imperium. A few even carried man-portable fusion guns that can roast pretty much any target at pretty much any range. Dayon judged the distance to the tower. It was another hour at least to the top. He assessed the situation grimly. The crew are climbing up the face of a mountain with no cover. "Guys," said Dayon. The crew turned to face him, their eyes following his finger to the small platoon of Zodani soldiers assembling in the distance. "Guys, we're in pretty deep shit." The skipper nodded, gesturing to the tower. "Let's keep moving." Stopping only to steal a backwards glance at his crew, the captain continued briskly up the narrow path. The crew stood there a moment, looking nervously at each other, then quickened their pace to follow. So, most of y'all, I know most of y'all are probably close to my age. So a lot of you remember all of this, but it didn't start here. Everyone thinks it started here. Everyone thinks it ends here. Oh, it ends here. The golden age of tabletop role-playing is dead because Dungeons & Dragons. Silliness. Utter silliness. I'm going to do a video, probably a drunken late-night video on that. But this is a sober midday video, and we're going to talk about a difference between the way modern gamers view and create content for role-playing games rather than what we do. Us old geezers, what we used to do back in the day. So, it didn't really start here. It started here. Okay? It started here. Wargaming. It started with a bunch of guys who would go down into a basement with a big, damp sand table with hundreds of miniatures on the board, and they would fight out huge battles. It's wargaming, okay? That's where it really started. Now, this is not a game the way a modern gamer would think of a game, okay? This is really more of a rule set, okay? All the tables and charts and things that you need are in there, but this painful little expositionary text, you kind of have to know a little about the whole concept of wargaming to even understand this particular book, which was actually Gary Gygax's book. He wrote this. He did a lot of game rules. That's what he did. That was his business. This little book is typical of the size of a rule set back then. This is a small, short pamphlet. Okay? That's what it is. It's a pamphlet with a whole bunch of rules crammed in small type, as much as they could stuff in there. Okay? It's not interesting. There's no pictures, just charts. Wargaming. Very impactful visually on the table. Not so much looking at the rule book. Okay. This did not evolve into this. Oh, I guess that's not real, but none of them are. They're all reprints from whatever. But this did not evolve directly into that. There was a whole thing that happened before Dungeons and Dragons was invented. There was the concept of role-playing games was not unique to Dungeons and Dragons. The first time it popped its ugly little head up was something called Braunstein. And wow, it could have been a different world. It could have been a different world. Braunstein was it was appended to traditional wargaming. Traditional wargaming would be, I'm the French and you're the Germans, and this is the battle we're going to recreate. And then you would put the terrain up, and you would even sometimes have a third-party arbitrator to decide rules if things came along unexpectedly. So the whole idea of a game master or a referee is not unique to Dungeons and Dragons either. Okay, this is all goes way, way, way back. Okay. The wargaming genre kind of limited the participation in a wargame to two. One general for each side. Other people would show up, and this guy Braunstein, that's why they call it Braunstein. This guy's name was Braunstein. You had this idea, well, I'll tell you what, you're the mayor of this town, and your job is to protect the civilian population as much as you can. You're the guild master of this town. Your job is to protect the profits of this village as much as you can. And he would assign jobs to people inside the battle zone that had nothing to do with the battle, and kind of arbitrate the results at the end of the encounter, at the end of the war. And they would be able to act on the board just like the generals and the soldiers could, but they would be civilians, so not necessarily targets. So it was a fascinating idea, and it developed a following. It developed a kind of a cult following. One of the enthusiasts for Braunstein was a fellow named Dave Arneson. not much of a businessman, but he was a smart guy and a good game master, and he had great ideas. But he had this idea for, taking it the next step. And he created his own kind of group of friends who had played their own little campaign, which he called Blackmore. And again, it was still a blend of wargaming and role-playing, but this time the role players were combatants. Okay? This time the role players played a much larger role, including fighting. And this system was called Blackmore. Never got properly published. But probably never really existed in written form to the point where it could have been properly published. It was a wild, wild west back then for gaming. We were making stuff up and scrawling it down on scraps of paper and just doing it as fast as we could back then. It was Arneson who went to Gygax with his Blackmore concept. Gygax was a businessman. This is a guy who printed rule books. So things could. I'm not entirely sure what happened to Mr. Bronstein. I think he ran off and joined the military. I think that's what he did with his life. But I can't help wondering what a different world it might have been if he had stuck around and kept playing Bronstein with Dave Arneson, who Dave Arneson would have turned to with this Dungeons and Dragons idea. Could have been a very different world, folks. Okay. Yeah, all these traditions go a lot further back than any modern gamers really seem to understand. One of the fundamental philosophical differences between gaming back then and gaming now is an issue of brevity. We didn't... Well, allow me to demonstrate, because that's the whole point of the video, right? So, Dungeons and Dragons. When Dungeons and Dragons first came out, it was this. Okay? This was it. That was the whole game. Each book is between 35 and 40 pages. Okay? They're very, very small books. Again, very small print, trying to pack as many charts and tables into the smallest spaces available. Terrible, terrible artwork. Just, you would be stunned. The difference of the artwork back then. Most of the stuff was cropped from, or it did have boobies. That was kind of nice when you were a 15-year-old playing Dungeons and Dragons. Traveler. Now, when Traveler first came out, it was exactly this, not exactly, it was a very similar format to Dungeons and Dragons. It was 3 little books, longer books. The Traveler books would be 60, 65 pages. Okay, longer books. But 3 books in a little box. No dice. You didn't get dice. But it was a D6 system, so you already had the dice you needed. They're on your Monopoly board. They're on your Risk game. You already have that stuff. So, Traveler. This is the condensed rules. It was published later. It's available on Drive-Thru RPG? Yeah, I think it's a pod on Drive-Thru RPG. But this is basically the whole 3 books all tied up together. But again, this is the whole system. It's not just the player's handbook. But the point is brevity, okay? Because this covers like literally the travels of your entire module. This is a module. This is a campaign module for this system, okay? This is an epic campaign module. It will run for 50 sessions if you get really, if it gets really out of control, if the players really kind of dive into it and have a lot of bad luck along the way. I think 20 is a pretty reliable. They'll probably get through it in 20 sessions. That's half a year's play in my world. So, yeah. This much content by a modern company, and I've actually seen evidence of this, because another great module that was made was called Secret of the Ancients. Same size, same skinny little book. Secret of the Ancients, and it's been republished by Mongoose. By the way, full disclosure here, I don't play Classic Traveler anymore. I have adopted Mongoose 2E as my favored system. I'm not going any higher than that, guys. I'm not going any higher than 2E. 2E is fine. You can leave it for a while. In any event, this is one of the great campaign settings ever created. Now, one of the differences between this and a modern campaign setting is that it doesn't stand alone. But another is that there's not a lot of exposition. It's just setting. Okay? There's not a plot. It's just setting, random encounters, incidents along the way. And if the players do manage to struggle along and find the hooks, they get the reward at the end. If they don't, they don't. Okay? Most of them did when they really set their heart to something. In any event, it did offer, for those of us who wanted to just sit down quick and dirty and play just the scenario, a bunch of pre-generated characters. The Traveler has a very interesting reputation where characters are concerned. Yes, in Classic Traveler, it is actually possible to die as a character. But on the other hand, the character creation process really wasn't very complicated. I mean, look how short that is. You know, this is 1, 2, 3, this is 8 characters here. Okay. So there's just not a lot of information that needs to be brought up. It's a little mini game. You play it at the beginning. And the better your character is, the more survival rolls you have to make. The more survival rolls you have to make, the less. It's a mini game. It's a mini game. It's a fun little mini game. I did not use this system for very long. The basic system. There was a more advanced system that came along later that I started using. But yeah, it's not complex. Drawing up characters is not hard. It's not like, oh, you broke my heart, you killed my character before it even started. It was like, damn it. I pushed my luck too far. Now you got to start over. This crew briefing. This is written very generically, and it's deliberate that this is written so generically, because people are not gonna want to fit their campaign into your setting. You got to put your setting inside their campaign. So this takes place in a specific time in a specific location, which is known to players, at least known to exist before the scenario even starts. This takes place in the Spinward Marches, which is a star system setting. It's a little complicated with Traveler, but basically it's nothing but star maps and planetary profiles, which is a very short little blurb that represents the planet's size, water percentage, atmosphere, government type, social order, law level, technological level. There's just a very few string of statistics that create what is a planet. And that dictates trade goods and costs and all that nonsense. This is set in a place called the Spinward Main. And there's a map of it here. The Spinward Main. Okay, this is the typical sector map. And when I said this takes place in the Spinward Marches, there's a book with all this information already in it that the players have probably, if they're playing this module, then they've already seen it. They're on it. They're using it regularly. But this is what a Traveler star map looks like. Yes, it is two-dimensional, guys. It is a game after all, and it's very hard I've tried to do a 3D kind of map for a tabletop role-playing game. Now, the math isn't that complicated, but it's still just more work. It's less fun, and that's a problem when you're playing a game. So, what makes this a campaign module is really much more of how the information is presented to your players. This is the rumor table, and this is the spine. This is the backbone around which the rest of the campaign is wrapped. Okay. The game presumes that the players are, for some reason, trading. Okay, that was a very common way of making money. Starships are very expensive. Crew costs, maintenance costs, everything. You got to buy everything, you know. And most of these ships are not paid for yet. So they all have these big fat loans like hanging over them. And banks are not terribly forgiving about non-payment in the Empire. So, yeah, it's you got to make some dough. Most players do that by trading, and if you can find good trade routes, you can make a lot of money. And if you have a good trader, you can make a lot of money very quickly. Trading is a skill. It would be picked up by the merchant background. The game kind of assumes that you start here in Regina, but after that, the storytelling element is over. The players can travel anywhere they want, in any location on this map they want. They can travel off the map if they want. Like I said, this information all exists in other books. So they can travel off the map if they want. And the game itself is going to procedurally create events and things along the way. It's entirely possible that your players won't even take the hook unless you give them a little nudge that this is a pre-published adventure at a time. They may not even take the hook in Regina. They may just fly off. But yeah, this is a very lucrative trading area here, but it's going to take some time to get to know it. So the players can basically hop from system to system trading and getting to know the area. And as they do, they will find rumors. That's how this works, okay? So when they hit a certain planet, if they get lucky and find a rumor, this tells you what that rumor is going to be for each planet. So they may have to visit a planet a couple of times to get the rumor from it, okay? There's other rumors. There's rumor tables. It's just part of the basic system. Okay, now one of the words you're going to find along the way is Philosophy. Now look, guys, if you want to play this module, you go away, because at this point we're talking spoilers galore. Okay, so yeah, go away. For the rest of you, Philosophy is the kind of the place that all the clues lead. Okay, and all this is the setting. Okay, there's nothing else here. There's no the players will arrive at and they will meet this person. All that stuff is covered in other tables from the main system. You don't use that stuff. You don't need that stuff. It's a simple hex crawl. Okay, all the areas are keyed by terrain, and there's random encounters for each terrain area. Okay, animal encounters, blizzards, chasms, gullies, deep snow, fog. All this stuff can happen. Okay, the animal encounter tables are here. Okay, simple stuff. Each line is an animal, and that's all the information you need to run the animal. Like I said, very streamlined, not a lot of detail. It's up to the game master. Game master's got to be creative on the fly. It's up to the game master. They didn't paint all of these different creatures for us. You just had to be able to kind of make something up, and at the end of the day, you would jot everything down and make as many notes as you thought you could handle. And yeah, just hope that, and if it does come up again, so what? It's a different species of grazer, You got to detail it all. In the end, you do arrive at Twilight's Peak. This is a mountainside tower. I think there's a picture of it in here somewhere. Maybe I'll make it the thumbnail. But yeah, there's a picture in here somewhere. But it's just that you see a tower and a peak with a glowing window. And you have found the octagon tower that you've been looking for. And you go down. Now, I realize this is what we called maps back then. They were not designed to be blown up on a put on a tabletop. We did maps on graph paper because technology. But there's much sexier graphics available. Mine aren't that great, but they're down below, and my players seemed to enjoy them. I'll put a link to them down below if you want to check them out. But there's other maps that you can find just by doing a simple Google search that are all better than these. But the encounters themselves are really well planned out. Now, again, short descriptions. Leave the details up to the game master. Okay. Eventually, you go down into the deep catacombs below the tower. You're being chased by Zodane agents. Again, that's a setting issue. The players already know who the Zodani are. They already know why they're being chased. They already understand that something really crappy is going on here, and they're running away, and they're going to find an alien base. And once they have found that alien base, that's it. The Zodani are done. Because or the players will die down in the base. It's very easy. It's very powerful. A lot of powerful stuff going on down there. It's very easy to just get killed. I've never seen it happen, but I've heard of people just at the very beginning, just the whole group just falling into the river and dying. There's a little section in the back, kind of a glossary of terms that they're likely to find along the way. So the players just ask you, "What's that again?" You can just look it up and tell them exactly what that term is. There's that picture I was telling you about. Okay, a little big tower on the hill. The Octagon book is one of the treasures they find along the way. It's not really a treasure; it's more like a clue book. It tells you where it can be found and how it can be found. And the epic. This is the story of Twilight's Peak. That the whole thing starts as a bar fight over the legend of Twilight's Peak in Regina. That's how the campaign starts. This is the text of the epic. I have had players actually read this and figure out immediately exactly where they needed to go just by using the maps. And then, a little handful of notes. Some details on one of the species, one of the droin, they're called. With some pictures of these guys, too. They're an alien species that makes an appearance, makes their first appearance, actually, in this adventure. Now, the reason I'm showing you all this is because this is how I like my content. Okay? I like a 64-page book because that'll cover it for me. I just need setting. I don't need your story. Okay? I just need setting. No, I don't need your story. The story will write itself. I don't need your story. I just need the setting. The players write the story, not you, not me. Okay? I just need the setting. And that's all these provide, was the setting. Sprinkle some clues along the way. There's a whole game going on around them the whole time they're there. Okay? This is not about my vision. This is about the referee who's running it. He's going to have his vision, and that's the vision that's going to be presented with the little bit that I threw into my 64-page campaign setting. Right? And that's how I prefer my content to be delivered. I don't want to read a 250-page book. I want to read a 65-page book and then fill in the details myself. Okay? So this is why I generally don't get involved. This is one of many reasons, honestly, that I generally don't get involved with modern systems. There are exceptions to that. I do play Traveler. 2nd edition Mongoose Traveler. I love the system. I use it. But I don't buy their modules. I bought one module. I don't buy the modules. If I need a module, I got plenty of them. Okay, I got plenty of modules. So, I love the rule set, but I don't dig the modules. Y'all want to memorize somebody else's, and it's got to memorize it. You got to really read it, and you got to really know it. Even if it's only 64 pages, you have to do that, right? You have to know it. But I mean, I could learn how to, I could do a semester of pretty much any college course in the country and the amount of time and effort it's going to take to become that familiar with somebody else's 250-page book. I don't see the point of that. And I don't want to do it. Okay? If I need to know what, zany Uncle Dax's flat looks like on Regina, I can throw that out on the spot. Okay? That's not a problem. They want to know that. But, this is a different time, I suppose. People want to know exactly what the apartment looks like and where it is, and it's got to be battle maps for everything. How do you know where the battles are going to be, for Christ's sake? Unless you planned it that much, how do you know where the battles are going to be? The battles are going to be wherever they pop up, because that's the way a proceduralized game like old school Dungeons and Dragons or Traveler was run. Okay. Anyway, that's it. That's all I really wanted to talk about. If you want to get into Traveler, there are some ways to do it. The book I showed you, the big book. Put it down somewhere. But the big book is available, like I said, as a pod, I think, on Drive-Thru-RPG. The best way to get it is just to buy the DVD. They have a DVD with PDF files of all the classic Traveler modules for peanuts. $30, $20, something like that. I think you find what do they call themselves now? Final Flight Games, something like that. I'll find it and put a link down below. But that's really your best deal. You just buy the whole thing at once. If you want the newer stuff, go Mongoose Traveler. That's cool. I did it. I'm using it. But the modules are still better. So you might want to go ahead and get the PDFs too, because the modules for those old games are amazing. Thanks for your time. Hey, if you want to give my second edition Dungeons & Dragons campaign a crack, I got a link to that down below too. We'd love to see you. Only a couple of core players. We've had a bunch of people come and go. But we have spaces available. Link below. The link below is only for new players. Okay, the established players are not going to show as players. They're in. They're not. That's not changing. I'm going to show you my favorite box because I love this box. I made everything in it. Thanks for your time. Time is precious, and you just gave me a ton of your time. So thanks, and Angry Rant forthcoming. See you soon.